Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope this is working well. Yeah, okay. Yeah, good. I was worried for some reason, the connection went down when I logged in, and I was worried I'd lost internet, but we're good. We're good. Shouldn't have been 1 minute late today. We don't like being even a minute late. It's no good, right? We like being on time. Bitcoiners are on time. B for victory. Bonjour. Good morning, Bitcoiners. TGIF. Indeed, B for victory. TGIF. We had a little bit of a tornado situation yesterday. So I had the floods a couple days ago. Now I had the tornadoes yesterday. But at least today is nice, right? We have a nice day. The sun's up, right? Sun's up despite the flooding and the tornadoes. And Bitcoin is running. So we're good. All that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what is new. You can drink anything you'd like, though. I just happen to like coffee with a splash of milk, just a splash. No sugar, nothing like that. P-Man Van, fine day to stay humble and stack sats. Isn't that so? Guten Tag, Andy Benton. Robert with a good morning. Joe, hi, Joe. Good to see you here today, my man. Happy Friday. Were you affected? Pretty intense in my area, but all good. P-Man, no, I was fine. I could have been affected. I was gonna drive to Ottawa yesterday, and just before I left, I was like, I should just check traffic and weather, and then tornado warning the whole ride. And then indeed there were tornadoes that hit. And so I kind of just waited. I'm right here downtown. I'm not sure if tornadoes can hit in a city center with skyscrapers, but I have no idea. I just was like, well, it's gonna be a little hard for them to form over the mountains and the skyscrapers, and it didn't happen. But there was some intense wind, and it was crazy. And I'm pretty high up here, so I can see. And my view is north into the mountain and some of the skyscrapers. I couldn't see the first skyscraper in front of me, where normally that's all I see. So it was pretty hairy, and there were about 3 instances of weather coming through like that. So I got caught out for 1 minute, and it was pretty fun. The kids were loving it. They thought it was hilarious. We knew it was coming. We just went to get a couple things done, and we got caught on the way back, but it was fun. So we're not here to talk about weather, right? Weather is okay. It's kind of interesting, but Moscow time is much more fun. So I got some pretty good Moscow times today. Aren't we always talking about this lab leak thing? Like, what is going on? How many times have we heard that it wasn't bats and wow, proof that it's lab leak, but it's like the same story repeats itself all the time. How many times do we have to hear it? Here's another version from the Daily Mail. Scientists at center of COVID lab leak cover-up admit decision to downplay theory was political because they feared a shit show from China, right? So, pandemic, but feelings, right? Pandemic, but feelings. We don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Here's a pretty good one. Hunter Biden and his lawyers. Now, are they out there defending themselves? Do you hear ABC News hearing their excuses and defenses? Nope. ABC News is covering Hunter Biden, but it's a little bit of a different angle. Here it is. Hunter Biden's attorney sends cease and desist letter to President Trump's legal team, claiming Trump's rhetoric on social media and elsewhere could lead to Hunter Biden or his family's injury. Whoa. But doesn't he live in the White House? But I guess it's not secure in the White House. That's what we've heard, right? There's no cameras there anymore. There's people running amok with weed and coke, and they'll never find the person, they say. That's another headline this morning, right? They've given up looking for the coke, the person who lost the coke, right? Secret Service concludes their cocaine investigation. No suspect identified. What? Right. So I guess, here's a little prediction. You know what you're going to hear pretty soon? Oh, there was construction. We had to turn the cameras off. Right. So get ready for that. No, there was no cameras in the room at that time. That under renovations. It's under renovations. There's no cameras. Come on. They were renovating over there. Don't look over there. It's not happening. And of course, Trump. Uh, again, Trump has got to be one of the best writers going. It's just very visual, right? It's just very visual. Here's what Donald Trump said about Hunter Biden, and they can't find who they can't. No cameras, right? Uh, it has just been announced that the investigation of cocaine in the White House has ended, despite all the cameras pointing directly at the scene of the crime and the greatest forensics anywhere in the world. They just can't figure it out. They know the answer, and so does everyone else. In the meantime, they continue to target and investigate me for years in what has been called the greatest witch hunt of all time over nothing. Election interference and a two-tier level of justice. All right, so that's what some people are talking about today. And again, everyone mentioning no fingerprints, no DNA, no video footage, just like a White House. It's okay. It's not a big deal. It's not that. It doesn't need to be safe, right? And now I will say that it's not so simple as it's just Hunter or not, right? It could honestly be someone planting Hunter, right? So this could be like, it's not like everyone in the deep state is happy with the Bidens. It's a lot of extra work. If you're one of these people running censorship and interference and psyops, and you're like, geez, these Bidens, can't they make it easier for me? It's really hard trying to suppress information when a crime family is involved. You'd want just your run-of-the-mill family. Crime family is a bit much. So they're simply just not, going to find it. There's no fingerprints, no DNA, no video. But you do have to wonder if they're going to find out if there were any dirty tricks, because I kind of think there's some dirty tricks involved here. I don't think it's as simple as Hunter. But then again, did he not do cocaine in front of everyone on July 4th on the Truman patio? Maybe. I don't know what I saw. I saw someone doing this and getting all fidgety after and looking like a cokehead, right? So, but that's just confirmation bias, of course, right? Maybe he was just happy and in the spirit of July 4th. Who knows? Who knows? Now, so here's one more funny thing that we got from Moscow Time, and it was the FBI testimony from 2 days ago. Remember Christopher Wray, who just lied, right? He just was like lying, right? We don't know anything. He was lying about the best one was the FISA stuff, right? Where he admitted that it shouldn't have happened, right? He admitted that, we probably shouldn't have spied on Trump, and it was probably a bad thing. But listen to what he's saying, right? He admitted that it was a mistake and that the previous management of the FBI definitely did do a little bit of spying on a political campaign and a guy who was running for president, and did definitely run, some not so cool things with the FISA and signing and surveying and all that stuff. And he was just like, yeah, we're not going to do it again, right? But like, where were the fired people? This is a pretty big crime, I think. But it's just like, yeah. We noticed we shouldn't have done it, but next time we're not going to do it. Right. So I believe you. Don't worry, Christopher Wray. I believe you. And then yesterday, when they went out and said that, we're not going to let it happen again, they also took time to reiterate that they need the FISA tool stuff. So they tweeted yesterday, at today's House Judiciary Committee hearing, FBI Director Wray discussed the Bureau's progress in safeguarding American civil liberties while using FISA Section 702 as a valuable tool to protect national security. Glenn Greenwald says, every year a new report is issued detailing how FBI violated its surveillance powers. Every year the FBI director goes before Congress and says, oh yeah, that was in the past. Don't worry about that. We fixed it. Come on. Then Congress votes to reauthorize its powers and the cycle repeats. But here was the best one, right? So here was them about the Christopher Wray when he said, we never spied on parents, right? We didn't do that. We didn't spy on parent groups. So the FBI released an actual tweet saying, in reference to the false assertions about investigating parents at school board meetings, FBI Director Wray told the House Judiciary Committee that the Bureau is not in the business of policing speech. Come on, read more here. And then the actual quote is that the FBI is not and never has been in the business of policing or investigating speech by parents at school board meetings. When there's violence or threats of violence, we're going to work with our state and local partners as we always have. But what happened to that tweet? Community Notes came in and said, the FBI statement is misleading. On May 18th, 2023, former FBI agent Steve Friend testified before the House Judiciary Committee that he and others were directed to surveil and document parents attending school board meetings. Where would we be if it wasn't for this community notes thing? And what did we say months ago that community notes, the minute it came out, was going to be the biggest thing, right? We explained how it worked. It came from this Taiwanese technology that didn't promote the polarization of politics. It actually counts more in its aggregation and how it's displayed and how you see it when the sentiment or thoughts are held by both political spectrums. So it's an aggregation tool that allows you to see across political lines if it's possible, right? So the more things are held by different groups of people, the more agreement is held. They don't have to come to agreement. The more algorithmically it sees there's agreement on the two solitudes, the more it will crystallize into an actual community note. And so where would we be if it wasn't for these things, right? We would, I don't know, it would not be good. And we predicted that here. We predicted that it would be a major change and a super valuable tool. And so far it has been. But it's not just the tool for community notes that I think is going to continue to cement Twitter as the premier battlefield of World War III and one of the major fault lines within the whole conflict. Another, factor was released yesterday, which is everyone on Twitter is getting paid now. All the big influencers are getting paid. So I don't know if you guys saw this, but all kinds of people jump forward talking about the checks they're about to receive. Many, many people in the 5,000 to 10,000 range that you would all know, right? I haven't seen what Bitcoin Magazine is going to get yet. I obviously I'm not in that game, but there's the potential anyway that lots of people are going to make a really good living out of this. Now, I don't know how it's going to affect the algorithm and all that, but we'll see. Here's what Ashley St. Clair says. So she's going to get a ton of money. She's also working with, who is it that she works with again? One of those like the Blaze or some Daily Wire or some of the Babylon Bee, or she's one of these online influencers that also has kind of a contract with one of the media companies, but I don't remember. So she's real happy, right? And she's pointing out here though that out of nowhere, Taylor Lorenz came back on Twitter to talk about this, and she started asking people questions like, how much money are you getting, right? Can I have a quote? And then Libs of TikTok said to her, no, right? And then started asking Taylor Lorenz how much money she gets paid by deep state things and blah, blah, blah. So that didn't go very well for Taylor Lorenz. So she comes in and says, Musk is putting massive amounts of money directly into the pockets of some of Twitter's biggest anti-LGBTQ hate accounts. So End Wokeness got a check. And Ashley St. Clair comes in and says, the irony of Taylor Lorenz complaining about a billionaire burning money by compensating creators when the dude who owns the outlet she works for is a billionaire who owns a $500 million yacht. Of course, Taylor Lorenz works for Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos. So that's always been one of her favorite things, is criticizing people who work for, who simp for billionaires. That's like one of her lines. But it really does just irritate everyone when they realize that she also gets paid that. So Mike Solana comes in and says, kind of obsessed with the fact that Taylor Lorenz came back to Twitter for one day just to tell us all it's evil that we're getting paid, right? Which is indeed what she did. Taylor Lorenz just this morning stated the internet should be open and free in the Substack pod, right? People who personally annoy me should not be paid for their work. That's kind of what she's saying. Ashley also says Taylor Lorenz thinks that the money paid to creators on Twitter should go to struggling newsrooms instead, right? That's what she says. It should go to the newsrooms because they do such a great job. Now, the numbers on Threads, for example, where Taylor Lorenz spends all of her time, are dead. It's been out for a week. No one cares. The Google search came out last week. The first day it was released, people searched for it at the same rate, a little bit higher even than Twitter. Twitter, of course, remains steady all week because it's Twitter. And Threads has completely dropped off a cliff. Nobody cares. No one's there. There hasn't been a Zuckerberg sighting on Threads in about 3 or 4 days. What's his name on, Greg, Greg, the Twitter, crypto Twitter guy, Greg 217, and he's got that stupid face, but everybody knows him and he's always in everyone's comments. It's a funny anon character. Who sometimes gets interactions with Elon Musk. Big account. And even he said, I don't think it's going to work over on Threads. Ian Miles Chong came out and said, is it safe to declare Zuckerberg's Twitter clone a dead enterprise, or does the lizard man have an ace up his sleeve? Curious to know how you think he's going to react to Twitter's new creator payment. So going against all these big accounts that are getting paid is probably not good. And Musk did one other thing yesterday that was hilarious on the same day that he's timing. If you remember a year and a half ago, when he was starting to try and buy Twitter, that he released a perfume called Burnt Hair in order to finance it. So people actually started getting them yesterday in the mail, the people who did give him money to buy Twitter. Because at the time it was like, I'll fund this troll exercise. No one thought he was necessarily going to do it. So now people got the burnt hair, right? That's when he said, please buy my perfume so I can buy Twitter. And a bunch of people bought it, and now they just arrived. So, not just getting payment, you're getting your perfume too. How can the lizard man compete with this? Now, Zuckerberg did get some news yesterday, and you always got to give him credit for this. He's in great shape, right? And again, this leads to my theory. Now, this is not relevant to anything other than we just want to show how prediction can work and why you go off of these things. I think Zuckerberg's getting divorced within the year, and I'm predicting that he's going to get divorced within the year because the whole Threads thing, in my opinion, is from his wife. So, when you like to go home from work and, sort of get your mind off the stresses and all that stuff. Well, if your wife is behind your business plan and forces you into a new business endeavor. Now, I have no proof whatsoever. I don't know the Zuckerbergs, have no clue what's going on. None, zero. Just a guess, but I think I'm right. And Zuckerberg, now basically, when he's done his work at Facebook and he goes home, he's just going to hear from his wife about how's our failure? How's it doing? How's Threads doing? Are you winning the political debate? Is Mr. President Orange Man hiding from you, Zuckerberg? Now, good for him. He's getting some credit for his physical shape. I wouldn't fight the guy, that's for sure. So he's looking great. He's looking great. And I think you're going to have a single Zuck within a year now. I don't want to see divorce. I'm not hoping for divorce. I don't want to see his wife get divorced and trouble in his family and how is his kids going to deal with it. I don't want any of that, right? But I think it's going to happen. So there you go. No other idea other than that. So what's funny, though, is that you see these tools now coming online for creators, right? You see payment on Twitter, which I think is a really big deal. I really do. So payment on Twitter. Now, it's not as big of a deal as the zaps on Nostr already. I've seen a lot of Bitcoiners compare what they're getting between Nostr and how easily it works and transparent it is, and putting P2P connections within that. That's still obviously the future. But seeing creative people get paid right now is just another one of those things that shows how quickly the pendulum is swinging when it comes to even culture and content and what people are doing and who's making money off of it. And follow the money, right? And we can indeed follow the money when it comes to these things. So all these tools for individuals, independent content creators happening simultaneous to an important thing that happened yesterday, which is the actors' strike. So now the writers are going on strike in Hollywood, but also the actors. So you're not going to see any content come on studio television, movie studios that is getting created new for months, maybe. So the writers have been on strike for a few months. Now the actors join them. So everything is shut down. Simultaneous to the actual actors not participating, they're all blaming AI. And so a little bit like Twitter getting these new tools to pay content creators, AI is already helping content creators compete directly with studios. And studios feel the heat, and that's one of the things that's being negotiated within this is, what do we do with this AI thing, right? The writers, the actors. Indiana Jones, of course, showed just what you can do with technology, de-aging and all those things. So at the same time as Twitter is offering these new tools, as AI is offering these new tools, we get this strike. And we also see the strike comes at the same time that two independent films, so Insidious, Red Door, I'll never see it. I have no idea what it's about. And The Sound of Freedom, both independent films. And apparently, The Sound of Freedom was several years old, created before QAnon. So everyone's been running in the mainstream media these things. Oh, it's QAnon for QAnon people, right? Oh no, Sound of Freedom about child trafficking. There's no problem with child trafficking. Come on, you know. So these two movies have destroyed Indiana Jones at the box office, which I find funny because Indiana Jones, they call him Indy. That indie films, so independent films, films that are not produced by major Hollywood studios, are always called indie films. So the simulation here winking a little bit at us with indie films destroying the indie studio film. And I think showing a real change, a real balance of power shifting to the individual content creators. I know personally, when I started creating this content, I was not really involved in Twitter until Elon bought it. I was not interested in going on a platform where if you said one thing, you were evaporated, and it just didn't make any sense. I had no interest. As much as I liked Jack Dorsey, I had no interest in what was going on with the platform and putting my life in it and engaging with Twitter. I only started really engaging. I mean, I had a Twitter account for years, and I found Twitter super valuable even before Elon bought it, but it was more for research. I'd more lurk and learn about things, and I just never wanted to say anything out loud. So when I had joined politics out of law school and watched Twitter rise, I saw a lot of politicians just get blown up and destroyed at a very early time before Twitter was even really popular. We're talking 2010 time period. So when I saw that up close, I was always a little weary of what the tool could do, especially when it came to saying stupid things and all that. So I avoided it until Elon was selling the burnt hair stuff. And now that I'm here, you can see it's part of a trend of all of these tools coming to independent content creators. And now we're in a position where people like myself, who've written a science fiction book, who do daily content here, we've probably never been in a better position to compete directly with studios, right? Like you're going to see people create their own movies. You're going to see people create their own content that would otherwise, and in previous times, taken hundreds of people to produce. You're going to get one or two people that are going to be able to do it now. So you're going to have a lot of change simply because the tools have caught up with the creative talent, and more individuals are going to be able to realize their creative visions based on the tools that are out there, and they're not going to have to go through the studio system. You saw Johnny Depp. If you didn't see Johnny Depp during Cannes Film Festival, he said this explicitly, right? So he got his huge standing ovation for the movie he made, but then of course the journalists, right, the Taylor Lorenzes of the world, oh, what about all the stuff with the wife who was taking a turd on your bed, and an Amber Turd, they call her, and weren't you a misogynist back then? And now I don't know anything about Johnny Depp, anything, right? So I know he likes to drink a lot. Anyone who drinks a lot can probably do a lot of stupid things. I doubt he's 100% innocent. Probably wasn't always nice to that girl. But I don't know anything, right, about what he does. What I do know is that when the journalists tried to corner him about this stuff while he was getting this standing ovation after this movie, I've never seen an actor murder live journalists the way he did. He dismissed Hollywood as nothing. You don't need to go there anymore. You're doing fine. Talent doesn't need to go through that system anymore. We're finally getting against you guys. All of you journalists sitting here pretending that you want to just do these cordial interviews. You're all phonies. You're all fake. You all just, and what he called it, and this is the interesting thing, right? And this is really sort of the struggle of our times and why this media thing is important. The way he described it is, we live in a weird time where technology and all this stuff sort of begs you to be the most in tune with who you really are, the most individuated version of yourself. Yet, at the same time, everyone is being corralled into a corner and told to think like the other person, and that you'll get chopped down if you don't do what the person next to you is doing. So people are caught in these counter currents. And he says, you can go and live that way. I'll see you on the other side, right? I'm not living like you. I'm not living as if I need to copy and imitate my neighbor all the time, unless in order that I don't get some form of repercussion. So Johnny Depp there, I think, anticipating this huge shift, anticipating Hollywood's loss of credibility, loss of clout, loss of attraction, really, right? That and because there are more options now, people don't have to pass through this. So Twitter, with this money, adding to that narrative, adding to that conclusion, and adding to the whole sort of perfect storm around what's going on, and the implications are big. So Roseanne Barr had this long interview, which I have not seen all of. And Roseanne Barr with Theo Vaughn, what's his name again? Theo, Theo, that guy, Theo Vaughn, something, who apparently is also going to be the next Andrew Tate. There's people after him trying to cancel him, but who knows? That's what some people say. So Roseanne Barr, if you don't know who Roseanne is, if you're not from America and are unaware of American television, she was probably the biggest television celebrity in the early to mid 90s. She took over for The Cosby Show, which was a big show in the 1980s, and Cheers, and just before sort of Seinfeld and Friends really caught attention of American audiences and became the largest shows in America. So she existed in that little portion in between. And John Goodman, the famous actor from The Big Lebowski, for example, who many of you know was her husband on that show. And it was just a blue-collar show about blue-collar Americans who struggled with money but loved each other and were a good family and were a little rude and crass, but everyone got along. George Clooney actually used to come on that show, so he was a young fella known on that show, a wife beater on the show, believe it or not. So those were sort of serious episodes. So what she ended up saying on this Theo podcast, and it's become really important and as I said, quite viral. It came out a few weeks ago, but people are still talking about it. So the quote is this: Hollywood really is an organized crime network. Hollywood got in bed with the CIA and government to keep people in line, keep them thinking fairy tales instead of looking at the truth. And she goes along these lines of what the business works like and why it fits hand in glove with government and why it fits hand in glove with the financial system and how it is used as a system of control and is part of organized crime, more or less. And you're going to see now that these tools are available because we're seeing independent content creators become so powerful, so successful. You're going to see a lot more criticisms of the like that Roseanne Barr just shared here. Roseanne Barr is sort of too successful to fully cancel, right? She did do quite well off that show. And you gotta say it, right? She's also Jewish, so she's regularly criticizing the Jewish element that is involved in this. Now, I'm a lover of Israel and a complete Zionist, so I don't mean this to be one of these like Jewish people things, right? So just to say though that she's, she was canceled for calling someone a monkey or something like that, and so there's people out there who say she's some kind of a racist or some kind of a anti-Semite. In this climate, you got to just sort of say what these people are in order to give them some credibility. So that's how she's said it. But when you think of this Hollywood changing this narrative, what she's alluding to, the collusion between organized crime, Hollywood, money, and brainwashing, it brings us right to what we're being presented with now by the Biden administration, which is this thing that they started yesterday, Operation Atlantic Resolve. So they're going to call up a bunch of retired U.S. soldiers in order to be on active duty in Europe in case Russia crosses another line. So it looks like Americans are going to be drawn into this thing, and it looks like this is according to Based Mike Lee, who's I think a congressman. All of this looks like it's going to set us up for the World War III situation that so many are worried about, because it's going to be hard to get them out of there. And here's his logic. He says, I've been trying to figure out what this means. Bottom line up front, President Biden is arguably walking the U.S. up to the line of war and daring Russia to shoot first. The president does have the authority to augment the forces of any named operational mission to active duty, for not more than 365 consecutive days. Operation Atlantic Resolve has existed since 2014 and is an official named U.S. military mission that deploys forces on a rotational basis, mainly in the Baltic states and Poland. Open source information on Operation Atlantic Resolve from the DoD does not suggest any forces are present in Ukraine under this mission. Since the conflict with Russia and Ukraine came to blows in 2014, rotational deployments under Atlantic Resolve have been considered a backbone of deterring Russia from crossing NATO's eastern flank. The active duty activation and deployment of these additional forces is a dangerous provocation, knowing full well NATO's eastern flank is adjacent to active hostilities. President Biden did the same thing at the beginning of the war in Ukraine in 2022, massively increasing our active duty force presence when we knew hostilities were imminent. But now it's even more risky because hostilities are active. Not only does this run the risk of further locking us into supporting Ukraine, now the military-industrial complex will say the U.S. military presence is the one thing preventing Russia from crossing NATO's eastern border, and that we have to maintain such presence indefinitely. This probably means a long-term security guarantee, another endless war, but this time by proxy. One could argue that unilateral troop activations / deployments like this into areas of active or imminent hostilities should be treated as a breach of the War Powers Act. Regardless, this makes me really uneasy. So you've got this whole situation now where at the same time as Americans can have the conversation about what we should really be doing in Ukraine, there's this whole new quagmire. Exactly the definition of quagmire, you're stuck with us, which is exactly what Joe Biden said to Zelensky 2 days ago. You're stuck with us. And they're going to be sending all these folks over there. And we'll see. It doesn't look like it's going to end in any way that would be useful or relevant and helpful right now, but we'll see. And again, because independent content creators, because these folks are starting to have more capacity to question these things, it trickles even into media. It trickles even into politics. The power that I suggest, this rejigging of power between independent studios for content creation when it comes to Hollywood's ability to brainwash people and sink them into the narrative, this equation becoming destabilized by Twitter giving content creators money, by the new tools like AI that make it easier to produce quality content. This changing narrative, I think, is going to embolden independent content creators even more, because you don't have to get along with the system. You don't have to get along with the platform in order to come out with that content. And I think you're going to see more things like you saw yesterday on CNN yesterday. Now, this is talking about the election, right? So Chris Wallace, he used to be on Fox, then he moved to CNN, and I don't think things are going for him great over there at CNN. But he had the Republican National Committee chair on the show yesterday. Now, just remember when it was a complete lockdown of what people would say on mainstream news and only Hollywood studios made films, it was very difficult to say things that weren't in the official narrative, right? And if you did, you would look silly and embarrassed, which is why we often talk about Bitcoiners staying humble as one of our most important protections against any form of psyop or influence or persuasion that would make us doubt what Bitcoin is capable of and what convictions we feel around it. So this Chris Wallace fella had the RNC chair, and they were talking about the election. And remember, it takes a lot to stick your neck out. Now, I don't know if the RNC chair is right, but the RNC chair refused to say that Biden was elected legitimately, right? We haven't seen public people say this stuff out loud for fear of being called an insurrectionist and all this stuff. But yesterday on CNN, someone actually said it. And Chris Wallace had to say, wait, what, right? So you're going to see a lot more off-script stuff like this. You're going to see a lot more people confused, acting confused because they haven't heard the other side of most stories before. And I think you're going to see the same thing around this Operation Atlantic Resolve, right? I don't think this thing is going to become the quagmire that some people are worried it's going to become, and some people are hoping it's going to become. You're going to have a lot more capacity to argue us out of there, and you're going to have a lot more platforms doing it. And people on Twitter are going to get paid to tell us to get out of Europe. So that's great news. And all of these tools coming together at one time and creating this situation, it even goes into our respect for the capacity of government, right? So this XRP thing that happened yesterday, right? Remember the XRP for years? Of course, I'm not an XRP fan, guys. Okay, we're not pushing XRP here. But remember, the government had this court case, the SEC, that it was a security, right? And yesterday, a court said not a security. And not only that, well, didn't say not exactly not a security. It said two things. It said the first institutional buyers who got it, it was a security. But once it was distributed to retail in the manner it was distributed to retail, it wasn't a security. So it both was and wasn't a security, according to the court's judgment yesterday. That is a pretty good way to square the circle. I always had a feeling they were going to get away with it. I always did have a feeling they were going to get away with it. But that it happened yesterday, for me, I think is one of those things where, when everyone says, oh, but the government's just going to regulate Bitcoin, right? What are you into Bitcoin for? The government's just going to regulate it. Government can't even regulate XRP. You think they're going to be able to regulate Bitcoin? They can't get XRP right. Some fucking scam run by a couple of Silicon Valley guys. They can't even figure that thing out. And I've met a bunch of these people. They're not geniuses. Chris Larson and all these people. I knew them years ago. We're not talking about the smartest people going, right? Brad Garlinghouse. Brad Garlinghouse used to call us at CoinDesk anytime we wrote a bad article about him, because the CEO of CoinDesk had gone to Harvard with Brad Garlinghouse years ago. And he would sit there and cry, "Oh, are you writing bad things?" And he would cry to be on stage. I would never let the guy on stage, right? Unless he was going on stage with someone like Ryan Selkis or someone who's going to dunk on him. I'd say, yeah, sure. You want to go on stage and get punched in the face? We can do that, right? I'll help you do that. And here's the funny thing, right? So Selkis, who became the largest opponent to XRP, right? So he was known as that. So if you guys don't know who Ryan Selkis is, Ryan Selkis was the original American director of CoinDesk. He's the guy who broke the Mt. Gox case originally as an independent journalist. In the whole vein of independent journalism in the industry, it goes back. He was one of the first. He would help break the Mt. Gox case. And because of that, he was hired by DCG. And then he convinced Barry Silbert at DCG to buy CoinDesk when it was distressed. CoinDesk was begun in 2013. I did not work for CoinDesk when it began. It was a London thing. And they put the whole balance sheet in Bitcoin. And the 2014 crash happened. So I joined CoinDesk when Barry Silbert bought it on Ryan Selkis's advice. And brought it to America to be in the hub of New York media and all that. So that's when I joined, when Ryan Selkis came. But Ryan Selkis only worked there for a little bit while I was there. We had about a year and a bit overlap. But what ended up happening was Barry, of course, wanted to hire fancy people, and Ryan wasn't quite fancy enough. He was just a little independent journalist who did Mt. Gox. So Ryan went on his own and created Masari. And now thinking of exactly what I'm thinking about here, this independent content creators, creative people, Disney studios, independent movies beating independent cinema, beating studio cinema, right? Independent cinema beating studio cinema, really kind of mimics what Bitcoin is trying to do on a much smaller scale. We're trying to do what independent movies have done to Disney's Indy. We're trying to do that with independent, individuated money, with centralized money. The same conflict exists. But here's the thing that was interesting about the judgment yesterday, and it's from the point of view of Ryan Selkis. So he went off and created this company on his own, and the whole point of the company was to be a kind of to take up the void that the SEC was leaving when it came to transparency and crypto having any form of disclosure and all of these things, right? So he was trying to put a little bit of sanity into the Wild West casino that is the crypto Ponzi schemes that are launched constantly. And so the judgment yesterday that came out that says XRP is this, security for some and utility coin commodity for others. What it said was the government had failed to create these sort of safe harbors and disclosure systems that would allow any potential coin other than Bitcoin to be a utility coin. So it was not just Howey test. There's a little more to it. There's a little bit of a lack of good faith, I guess is the way you can describe it. And Ryan Selka says, trying to think of a more bullish day for a company that spent 6 years talking about the need to build an Edgar plus S&P for crypto, then launching a bunch of new products and then getting a legal ruling that paves the way for a safe harbor and crypto disclosure standards. And all of this sort of reminds me of something Paul Graham said just a few days ago, and someone shared this with Ryan Selka's. Paul Graham, a big VC, says there's an interesting form of luck that affects startups. You start a successful startup, then a few years into it, some new innovation appears and you're uniquely poised to benefit from it. Smartphones did this for Facebook. AI seems to be doing this for Replit. So what he's basically saying here is that it's weird when things melt and break, old things melt and break, that there are sometimes these new things that stand to benefit in a uniquely amazing way. And I think that is exactly what we're talking about as we see all of this chaos. You see the studios crashing, the trust in media crashing, the ability to think of anything around these, even go back to that thing that I was just mentioning about the CNN and the guy on the network saying, I don't think that he was elected legitimately. There's a way you can actually frame that, right? So Chris Wallace says, wait a minute, you don't think that Biden was elected legitimately, right? Now, what percent of the public do you think can say for sure they know the election was safe because they listened to the media? Because that's the other argument, right? It's I don't think it was legitimate, the election, versus the media told me it was legitimate, and that's enough. That's where we're at, right? We're at that situation. So because we're in this point now where you're able to put the pieces together and have the conversation, in the same way that people are going to have more conversations which show they don't have much confidence in these systems, the media, to tell them the truth about the elections or anything, you're going to have this situation where private entities like Messari is going to take up the void left by a failure of public institutions like the SEC. And this is super bullish for Bitcoin. Any one of these institutions breaking the way they're breaking means that the aberrance of the vacuum that is created by them will create a situation for something substantive to fill the void. And that's why we're so bullish on Bitcoin, because only Bitcoin can fill the void in all of these systems simultaneously breaking. Movies, media, government, regulators, all of this stuff breaking at once all goes back to the broken money. And of course, Bitcoiners know what can fix this stuff. So I think, simulation winked at us with the Indy films killing Indy, and that it is a major bullish trend repeated by all the new tools that are simultaneously and serendipitously coming online for people like me and anyone else who has something to say. Anyone, right? I don't need to kiss ass at CNN, right? I used to go on CNN all the time, and you did have to kiss a little ass, right? I had to play a lot of games on CNN in order to keep getting called back and to say silly things that I said on CNN all the time, because I would never give them respect. It was always a type of irreverence that I went for. But now you don't have to, right? You can just not even bother. Who needs to go? I don't go on any of these networks anymore. I wouldn't say yes to any of them. I started saying no to all of them all the time, and that's the end of it. All right, what do we got here? Let's do the bonus currency edition. Bonus holes. Bitcoiners are bonus people, indeed. Wimbledon. We love Wimbledon. I've been trying to get Novak Djokovic to speak at my events for a long time. We'll get there. Good morning, Bitcoin tribe. Peace and prosperity. Isn't that the truth, veterans? We love it. We love it. Beaumatin, good morning. There you are, Daniel. Good morning, my man. I hope you didn't get more rain yesterday in Vermont. B for victory. Were you at Quebec Meet on Saint Vallier East in Quebec yesterday? Yeah, there was no way I could have made it to that, folks. Too much rain at that time. They have no shame for their incompetence. None. By not telling us that, yeah, by not, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's better the way it is. It's like, remember what I said about the Arizona election? It would be the best if they just stole it, right? The best. So you want to keep, you want the bad things to happen a bit. Wonderful morning, fellow Bitcoiners and team. I hope and pray that everyone has a splendid sleep last night. Yes, this applies to everyone in different time zones. Just change it a little. Great. That's a really nice thing to say. Not the Goblin Dude. We appreciate it. Where do I set? Yes, I was. Oh, you made it to the show. Great. Good morning from Lewiston. We love Lewiston, Joseph. We love Lewiston. We love Maine. Moi aussi, j'ai quitté tôt pour revenir à Montréal. So he left early, everyone. Yeah, the storms were no fun, guys. The storms were no fun. Threads is dead. Never even. Yeah, I've never used. I don't have an Instagram. I've never used Instagram in my life. I'll never use Threads. Obviously, it'll just never happen. Shit, le monde est petit. Prochaine fois on se contacte. They're saying, "Wow, the world is small. We gotta talk to each other next time." Funny. I've used Nostr more. Yeah, Nostr really is like. I had a nice just feeling on Nostr, right? You know, because Twitter still, I don't want to see the fight. How many fights do I have to see? You know, when they have the school shootings, boom, there it is. Like, you know, cam point of view of it. Like, I don't, I'm so sick of seeing people punched in the face on Twitter. I can't deal with it. As much as I love Twitter, right? That's what draws me to Nostr. I don't want to see all that stuff. Burn air perfume. Yeah, it was pretty good. I missed the meat smoking Zuck. Yeah, that was cool when he was into the, what was it, the egg that he was really into? The green egg? What's up with these green eggs? Does anyone have one? I want to buy one, but they're thousands of dollars, and it's just like black magic that makes me want to buy one. I don't really need one. I love my smoker, but every time I see one, it's like $3,000 or something stupid. To be fair, the evaporation of Twitter accounts still happens. 2 Unchained employees suspended in the last. Yeah. No, I'm not exactly what I just said about Nostr. I don't think it's Twitter long term, but for right now, it's great. Disney in real trouble, says Daniel. I think so. Yeah, I think they are. God forgives and forgets. We feel shame, but the devil accuses us and reminds us of our sins. Never forget this. Yeah, you know, one of the terrible things that's true about the human mind, something like, and it's with all of us, something like 70% of our thoughts are just negative, like about ourselves. You know, it's crazy. So forgiving and forgetting is the you know, that's how I recognize Jesus as God, by the way, simply because the message is pretty simple. Doesn't matter. He living the worst way you can, which is killed for something you said when you're not guilty and betrayed by your friends. There's probably no worse way to go, right? Like there's some bad ways to go. Jesus pretty much got the worst way. And what happens at the end of it? I love you all anyway. Doesn't matter. I mean, if you're going to recognize God, that's a pretty powerful story to understand it, right? Just don't go full Kanye, Nolan. I'm not going full Kanye, guys. We love Kanye, but we're not going full Kanye. Never go full Kanye. No. Kanye's story's not over, though, everyone. It's not over. But we are very happy with the emergence of RFK, so we don't need Kanye. I bet Ukraine turns on USA and joins Russia for the ultimate twist in the plot. The subsequent twist will be that the Biden admin was in the whole time. Yeah, the Truth usually rises to the top, but the question is, are people ready to hear it? That is the question. Yeah. And that's really what we're dealing with here, guys. We're dealing with nothing more than the cognitive dissonance created by the massive change that's in front of us. It's very hard for people. Ready Reserve includes former active duty members who were recently discharged. A lot of folks are discharged with a year ready to service obligation. They're almost never recalled. Yeah, it's not going to be good. Bad for their morale. Yeah. The Gooberment can't even regulate fiat dollars. No, they can't. The Gooberment. Ripple people know Ripple is a scam. It's like printing money. I heard one of them say in 2017 at a conference. It's as fiat as, yeah, it is. Absolutely. Absolutely. Go back to the early stuff. You know, so for example, I worked for Jesse Powell over at Kraken, and he left Kraken. Sorry, he was one of the founders, by the way, of Ripple. And he left because they gave themselves the pre-mine and sued them. So this has been around for a long time within circles. I could even tell you stories of people offering me Ripple in the early days because they couldn't get rid of it, basically. And it was like people just giving it out before it pumped too. I regretted not taking the free stuff, but it was scammy. So, you know. The P-Man Van, whether people are ready or not is of little significance. Time is of the essence, and there is only a finite amount of time. So keep preaching, whether it be Jesus or Bitcoin. Yeah, you know, war comes to you, right? You don't get to choose. Bitcoin is Indy. That's what I mean. It's the Indy, you know, the way indie films beat the studio indie is the way indie money is going to beat studio money, you know, more or less. Indeed, tomorrow is not promised to anyone. It is not. Thanks, David. That is a beautiful perspective. Yeah. Well, mind is a tool that needs maintenance. It sure does. Off to work. Good content for the drive-in. That's what we're after, Xander. We like East Coast commuters listening. We love it. We love it. We need more East Coast commuters. Peace, love, Bitcoin. Great show as always. Thanks, Cal. I appreciate it, my man. I do love that CNBC continues to have XRP ticker on the screen when talking about crypto. Lots of boomer bag. Oh God, how many boomers have asked you about XRP over the years? What about this XRP? I'll admit I even fell for XRP before. Sorry, it wasn't even XRP. There was no XRP yet. But when I was working in the Senate and I had all these folks testifying, of course, you know, we had Andreas Antonopoulos and but we got the original Ripple guys. There's no XRP at the time. It's just Ripple. And so one of the things that I did in the early days in order to make a career for myself really was understand the difference and even just navigate the environment. So my blind spot was cryptography. And I didn't know much about it. And so I had to start learning. So in the end, I became a big student of consensus systems and mechanisms and Byzantine fault tolerance and all of this kind of stuff. And I thought the XRP, or sorry, there was no XRP yet. XRP came later. The Ripple scheme was interesting, right? Like technically, and there was a great amount of interest at the start, even amongst Bitcoiners. There were no divisions, tribal coin stuff. It was all just like, Bitcoin's the only one that works. Can any of these other copies work for things Bitcoin can't do? Can we experiment with these other things? And what are they testing out? So we, you know, no one was saying Bitcoin bad. I like this other thing more. But people were saying some of this stuff could work. And I was pretty keen on Ripple working before I knew about the scheming and the scamming and the coins and the pre-mine. And then XRP came out. And then it was just like, what the hell is going on here? So that's all I got. All right. We got a no fear piece. Thank you. Absolutely. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Stay humble. Stack sats. SATs. As always, Nolan, you have a very informative show that I have a lot to take away from. I'm always learning something, dealing with. Yeah. Gooberment, Bitcoin, and monetary values. All right, Goblin Dude. I appreciate it. And we shall see you all tomorrow. And I think tomorrow, I'm heading to Ottawa tonight, but I think I should be able to do a show tomorrow. So I'll see you then, everyone.